guest speaker, the one and only, the fabulous Lee Davenport. Welcome, Lee.
Thank you, Monica.
As always, good to be with you, and thank you for sharing your time. I know it's valuable, and we love having you on these webinars, so thanks for being here. I want to introduce you just a little bit. Lee really is a thought leader in our industry, and she is a very well-known, recognizable coach, speaker all around the nation. If you aren't following her, she's an incredible blogger. She's like a top 5 blogger in the nation. You can follow her on Facebook, Learn with Lee, and also I believe just learnwithlee.com. Is that right, Lee?
Learnwithlee.realtor.
Realtor. That's right. I know it's something different. That's right. So she coaches all over the country. She also has been named a top 25 coach by Inman News, which is a huge honor and well-deserved, I am sure. She really has a knack for technology and a love for helping agents, and it shows in everything she does, and I think you'll feel that here today as well. And she's getting ready to accomplish her doctorate, which is huge. Congrats. I mean, that is amazing. You're in your last step of that on Monday, right?
Yes, so excited.
That's great. And her specialty, or what she focused on, was personalities and lead gen, and how those things, I guess, do we have preconceived ideas about that? What's true, what's myth, all those good things. So she's going to come back and talk to us about that at some point as well, as soon as she takes a break to Hawaii for a couple weeks. I'm guessing.
That's what I need.
I'm going to disappear and take my mug off this thing, and I'm going to turn it over to you and take it away.
Thank you so much, Monica, and thank you, Espresso Agent, for having me. It's great to be back. You guys are such a great audience, and I know you guys really want to make 2017 your best year yet. So let's get into some things that I hope will help you, but also will encourage and inspire you. So today, as Monica already said, we are talking about listings, and I really want to just go through several things that you may know, you may not know, you may know, but you're not doing, but all of it should help. So before we get started on some tactics, I wanted to just ask you guys some questions, and I don't know, Monica, you tell me if it's going to be overwhelming if everyone responds, but
not at all. Not at all. I can manage that for sure.
Okay. And, feel free, Monica, you can actually just chime in your own answer to some of these things as well. So I want to talk about what went wrong. So the first scenario I want to talk about is a situation, and these are real. Let me say that first. These actually happened with some people who came to me crying and upset, and they should have been. So let's talk about these, and I'll share some of the tips I gave them. And these are helpful because you may be dealing with them as well. So a seller agrees to list their home with you. They take you on as the listing agent, and they happen to accept the very first offer that comes in. Now, when that offer comes in, they go through the process, and unfortunately, it's a low appraisal. The seller, he walks, he cannot reduce, and the contract terminates. Now, as a result, you end up allowing the listing to expire. Tell me, what went wrong in that scenario? So again, we've got a seller, they signed your listing, the first offer that came in, they accepted it, but there was a low appraisal, the seller walked from it, and basically you lost out on a listing, even though you put a lot of time into it. What went wrong? What could have changed?
Feel free to type in your answers in the chat bar below. We've got some shy people, Lee.
No worries. Well, so
Samantha, thank you. Better communication, she says.
Very good, Samantha. Very good. That is something that could have been done very differently. And I don't want to make you guys feel like you got to answer questions. So, but I will say about this situation, what I talked about with this agent, was that they really needed to have a document or at least a conversation, but I prefer documents so you have it in writing, a conversation on what this process looks like. And that includes when you're working with a seller, you know your market better than they do. So you understand that low appraisals are possible. You understand it. So we, as the professionals, we have to do a better job of communicating so that they understand the process and understand potential challenges. Because had the seller known that the low appraisal was possible, the seller could have prepared for it. They could have potentially even done some things to sell the home and move money around, different things, but they were so blindsided by this situation, they walked and they weren't willing to relist the home with this particular agent. So that was a lost opportunity, which we do not want to happen because that means you won't be a listing leader. Here's the second scenario, and we'll just do two more. So here you have a seller who wants you to list at their ideal price, okay? As a result, it sits on the market for about 2 months. And then finally, you get a lowball offer. The seller is obviously probably frustrated at this point. It's been 2 months. They get a lowball offer. So they decide to take the listing from you and go with another firm. What went wrong here? What went wrong?
The listing agent, in my opinion, compromised his or her own business practices by accepting a price that they probably knew was too high. Malpractice at some level.
Exactly. That's exactly it. And, but the unfortunate thing is so many times I hear agents say that, they have not stood firm on their pricing suggestion. They're the ones with the tools to see what will the home really attract people at, but yet a lot of times we let the seller kind of bully us into doing what they want, which isn't right. And what happens is they still end up frustrated with the process, the seller, and may walk away from you after you've spent money on photos and all types of things to market the home. Now they're going with someone else who, funny enough, the second firm actually gave them the price that the first firm mentioned. So it becomes frustrating. Let's look at a third scenario. And this is one that, again, it's just frustrating all around. And these are mistakes that we make when we're listing homes, but we're going to go through some strategies so this never happens again. But here's a situation where the listing agent showed up at the appointment. She heard from the sellers, they said, hey, we had an appraisal a year ago. And in this particular market, homes have only appreciated. Now, when the agent ran her comps, she was about $8,000 off of their appraisal value. And she kind of stuck to that $8,000 difference. She felt that even though, let's say, for example, just to use a round number, the appraisal was $300,000 and she felt they could only get $292,000. So she stuck to her guns with the $292,000. As a result, they didn't have any agreement and she didn't get the listing. What do you guys think about that? What happened there? What went wrong?
We have somebody saying agent should have had the most current info.
Agreed. A lot of times that says that perhaps maybe the agent could have said, hey, let's do a pre-listing appraisal. Let's do another one so that we can compare apples to apples. And it probably would have been worth the cost, for the sellers to do it again. Or at $8,000, I mean, I don't know, for most of us, especially this was not a starter home. This was more of a mid-level home. So $8,000 is usually such a small number that if you don't have a meeting of the mind on, it makes sense to say, okay, let's list at this price. And if in 1 week we get no offers, no activity, no nothing, no showings, then we put it in the contract that all parties agree to reduce the price. say $1,000. If it were 50, if it were 100,000 or something that really would make a difference, then okay. But this particular family was already going to net about 200,000 off of the home because that's how much equity they had in the home. So again, just a situation where perhaps we majored as the agent on the minor and didn't focus on what really matters. So let's look at a couple of things. Now, again, I don't want you guys to feel like you have to share everything, but I would like for you in the chat box, if you feel comfortable, share with us the main thing of, out of these questions, again, you may not feel comfortable sharing all of them, but you could say maybe what held you back. So if you had a goal in 2016 to have a certain number of listings, but you didn't reach that goal, what held you back? If you want to share, great. If not, no pressure, because we're going to talk about a lot of things that should really speak to probably everyone's challenge. But if you want to share something specific, then I can actually even speak to that specifically. So I'll give you guys just a couple of seconds for that. And while you're writing those answers in, if you want to, let's talk about two things that I want to make sure that we all are on the same page about. So even in asking you to share what you felt like is holding you back, here are two reasons that so many of us don't realize we're doing. So the first one, hopefully you can see my little hamster wheel picture. And the hamster, he's like, every day I am hustling. And you may feel that way, where you feel like every single day you are busy, you've got movement. But the only problem with movement is it translating into leads, closings, listings? And a lot of times we are like that hamster, because we all know with the hamster wheel, that hamster is moving, running, but he's not really going anywhere. He's not going from point A to point B. He's staying in the exact same spot, but he just has a lot of activity. And so often we do that in our real estate business, where we have a lot of activity. You know, maybe we are going on a lot of listing appointments, but unfortunately we don't have the results from it. So that first thing that I call is that it's the hamster wheel. And I want you, I'm mentioning this because I want everybody to have an open mind that maybe in 2016, you did a lot of the same things that didn't produce results. So I want you to be open. That's my point of this. I want you to be open to what I'm going to share so that you can make some changes so that you have far better results in 2017. Okay. The second thing, notice the plate of spaghetti. You guys have probably heard of the spaghetti method, you know, where you take some spaghetti and in order to see if it's ready, you throw it against the wall and see what sticks. I tried that as a kid. My family, they got super mad at me because I had like stains running down the wall. And we know that it sort of works though. You can actually test the spaghetti and say, okay, it's ready. But the only problem is now so often we apply this in our real estate business. Again, to generate listings, to work with listings, we listen to a lot of different things and we say, okay, let's just try it all and see what sticks. And that is very random and that is very ineffective for our business as well. So I want to, if you did list some things that's been holding you back, whether you put it in our chat box or you just made a mental note, that's fine. But if you've been doing the same things or if you've been doing random things that are not strategic, I want you again to now have an open mind to everything I'm going to share, because again, I'm looking to help you really have some more listings, more than you've ever had going into 2018. Okay. So I will keep going, but Monica, did anybody happen to respond to
Yeah, we have a couple, I think, actually great examples of what we're about. These are probably universal. And to those of you who did post, thank you for being willing to share. Appreciate that. It helps. So follow-up held somebody back. They did 30 deals this year, and I think that was what they did last year. But either way, following up held them back.
Awesome. We are going to cover follow-ups. So I love that. Good.
Good. Not knowing my value, not being prepared for the listing consultation.
I think that's one of probably the biggest ones for, especially if you're newer to being a listing agent. That is one of the biggest ones. So we are definitely going to cover that. So thank you.
Yeah, that's a great one. Getting in my own way, imagining I can only handle just a certain amount of work. So I guess limiting your own performance in your head.
That's another good one. Just even our mindset and our attitude. And I will say there does come a time when we need to give things away, whether that means have a team, hire someone. And we'll talk a little bit about both sides of that, because I think you have to be able to evaluate when it's too much. So we'll talk about that as well. So good. I love these.
Yeah. And then this one I think is really good. I struggle with pre-qualifying sellers and buyers. I need to make sure they're motivated first so I don't waste time with people that aren't ready to go.
Yes.
That's huge.
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 I know. I feel like Donald Trump. I love it.
Yeah. Right. And then somebody shared that they're new to listings. They were a buyer's agent. So back to that idea of just the preparation and feeling confident when you go into a situation like that.
Okay, well, I'm so glad you guys shared those things, and we are going to cover all of those and then a little bit more. You guys pretty much hit on all of the things that really are issues when it comes to having a listing. So we've already talked about really what you feel like has held you back, but let's really now dig into, why do I lose listings, or why do I not get them? Why do I not have the confidence? Okay. You may not have ever heard it this way, but for some of you, this may sound familiar. There are 7 areas of responsibility, 7. So we are going to talk about these. And as we talk about these 7 areas, we are going to hit every single area that you guys just mentioned. So look out. Here we go. Let me give you an overview of these 7 areas, okay? Now, I'm going to compare it to rowing. When I was in undergraduate at the University of Michigan, they had just started a rowing team. Now, being in the Midwest, they didn't expect us to be much of anything because, you know, we're not on the coast. We're not on the West Coast. We're not on the East Coast. That's where rowing is really strong. So being in the Midwest, I guess we were kind of seen as a joke our first year. But we were we were determined to do well, and I'll tell you guys a little bit more about that story. But I really feel, it's funny enough, I feel that having listings and selling is very similar to rowing. And there's 7, again, areas of responsibility of selling that can compare to rowing. And hopefully this will leave at least a visual for you of what these 7 areas are. So the first one, and we're going to talk about these all a little bit more in depth. Now, I know, Monica, we only have about, 30, 40 minutes. So I'm going to keep it condensed. So this is all going to be a condensed version. I could probably talk about each one of the 7 for an hour each. So I'm not going to kill you guys with that. But
7 hours, although we do appreciate your time.
Yeah, no, I don't want to have everybody crying.
Right. Right.
We will talk about each one of them briefly just to get you guys started, so that for those of you that have had problems with either getting or keeping listings, at least first you'll know what area to now start to focus on more to build up your business. Okay, so prospect and qualify, that is the first thing. You probably realize if you don't have anyone to have an appointment with, well, then you won't have listings. So that's a no-brainer. And we had to do that, oddly enough, even in rowing. We had to first qualify for a competition. And for me, I'm actually not a small person. Like, I'm almost 5'8", and I'm, pretty healthy size, but they've considered me a lightweight because most of the rowers are like 6'2" and 200 pounds and they're lean. But I was in the lightweight category and I almost didn't qualify just because I was kind of small in weight compared to the rest of them in height. So with that compared to selling, we also have to be able to qualify each person. And I'm going to say right now, a lot of times we spend too much time with people that just do not qualify, period. So we're going to look at that. I'll give you some strategies, again, just some short condensed versions. The second thing is our pre-approach. And I know someone actually said, you know, what do I present? How do I get ready? How do I even approach them? And that's something that on the sales side and on the listing side, that can make or break our opportunity, because a lot of times sellers won't tell us why they've gone with someone else, but it had a lot to do with how we initially connected with them. I'll give you an example. Like if you were going into Macy's, and we all have been to a store where, you know, maybe the salesperson is off-putting and they approach you and they're like, hey, what you doing here today? What you want? Hopefully you haven't been to a store like that. Maybe that's not Macy's, maybe that's Walmart or something. But the fact is, it can be off-putting. And even if you were determined to get something from that store, you may say, you know what, I'll go over here to Nordstrom's instead. I'll go over here to Target instead of Walmart, because I was just turned off by how they approached me. So we'll talk about that, your pre-approach, that's critical. Now with rowing, our pre-approach, believe it or not, if you can see this boat here, we've had to carry these boats down to the dock. And to carry the boats down to the dock, we also had to make sure we had our oars, and all of our tools had to be with us, because obviously if we got in the boat, didn't have everything we need, we would waste time and we would potentially disqualify ourselves from even participating because we weren't ready. And again, that's what a lot of us, we do. We disqualify ourselves before we even get started. So we'll look at that. And I'm a tech lady, so I've got some tech tools to help you. And Espresso Agent is one of the tools that I recommend in some of this. The third thing is the actual approach. And I kind of covered that in even talking about the pre-approach. So I'll keep going past that in our overview, but we'll talk about it more. The fourth thing, and here's the big thing, it's the actual presentation. In rowing, it's our race, but the presentation itself is where we have to set ourselves apart. We really have to show the seller that we are the right person to work with. It's easier said than done, but I'm going to give you some strategies for that. Number 5, this is a big one that a lot of people, I hear, they tell me, you know, I don't want to bring up any objections they would have because I don't want to trigger objections. They might not have been thinking about these. But I'm going to tell you, as I said earlier, just using the example when you go into a store, a lot of times we have objections, but we don't say it. We just walk out and go somewhere else. So the goal is you present the objections, you talk about them, and we're going to go through some of the main ones. And the reason why is because if they already see that you have a solution or a potential solution for an objection, that can help you win. In relationship to rowing, that actually meant we had to be prepared for bad weather. We could not go out there and think it was always going to be sunny skies. Just like Monica said at the start, in Cincinnati today, you know, she said it's a horrible weather day. We had to be prepared for the bad times as well as the good. If you don't prepare for both, you are likely to not win the race. And this is a race, guys. You are competing, believe it or not, with whoever else they might be interviewing. And unfortunately, we take for granted that they're interviewing other people. A lot of times we think, oh, well, this is a friend, this is a neighbor, I'm the only agent they're interviewing, and that's just not true. We've got to be prepared to compete. The last, or not the last thing, almost the last thing is signed, sealed, and delivered. There are a lot of things that should be written down and signed. So we'll look at that. And the final thing, you guys mentioned it earlier, but it's follow-up. We do all of these great things. We could do 1 through 6 so well, but if we ignored following up, we are not only probably losing out on this opportunity, but we're going to lose out on referrals. We're going to lose out on repeat business. So it's so critical that all 7 of these areas are tackled, okay? So I'm gonna go ahead and just jump right into this for the sake of time. First one, prospect and qualify. With sellers, notice on the right-hand side of the screen, I've got a couple of options here. Now, we would love if, just like in the mall, there were a little sign that said, sellers are here, come right here, you know. It's not that easy, but it can still be easy. We recognize, just as human beings, that people typically need to sell their home in a few occasions. So I've got some of them listed. And these should be some of your target markets. We know people that are move-up buyers, right? Maybe they are getting ready. I know someone who's getting ready to have a set of twins. They already have 3 children in the house, and now they're getting ready to have a set of twins. They need to move up. They've got to get a bigger house. They're in a 3-bedroom. So we know those are people to prospect. Then we have divorcees. That's actually a great market. I have an agent that I coach in Michigan. She does a great job working with the divorcee market. She connects with attorneys, and she is basically their agent of choice. Next, we have empty nesters. We know that, a lot of times once the children are finally out the house, not just at 21 or 22, but at 30, they've moved out the basement, they really are on their own, then we know a lot of times the empty nesters say, hey, why do we need such a big house? Let's go ahead and downsize. We also have relocators, which might include military. It might include people for their job. We have heirs, because we do know, unfortunately, with estate sales and deaths, people get property as well as need to sell it. And then there's the luxury market, people who just want property just for the sake of having it. I didn't put up here investors because I think that is you have to reach them a different way, but they are included as well as potential sellers for you, okay? So prospecting, if you haven't identified who you are trying to connect with, if you just feel like, let me just reach all sellers, you may feel like you're very random. You're doing the spaghetti method. I want to encourage you in your marketing to actually be strategic and focus on you don't have to just focus on one, but focus at least on 1 or 2 so that you can be targeted in where you're sending your money. And here's the next reason. We have to have a very defined marketing message if we're going to prospect and we're going to connect with sellers properly. So I have a question. Are you marketing like it's 1999? What do I mean by that? Basically, I mean, do you still look at all I need to do is post it and they will come? And that's because that was, I think Field of Dreams came out in the 90s, and that was kind of the thing. Post it and they will come. We will just talk about the fact that, okay, I got an open house, everybody come see it, or, here's a just listed, just so, which are still effective, but that can't be all of our strategy. Now, much of our message has to focus on social media. And to really have a defined strategy on social media, again, first, we've got to look at who. We've already talked about these life stages, but also what area of town. You want to be very strategic because you will waste a lot of time and likely money if you are not focused on a proper who. Now, in saying who, of course, we don't want to violate fair housing. We know that we can't say, well, because I want to focus on young professionals who are single, I'm going to put, if you have 5 children, don't bother to contact me. We can't do that. I know you guys get it. That's a violation of fair housing. So we cannot be discriminatory, but we can still focus on who best fits our market and our demographic. Beyond the who, we need to know what. Now, the what, this is the big part of us moving away from 1999, because now with social media, we can have testimonies. We can actually become content generators for our area. We can talk about the events that are coming up and different things that will capture and intrigue sellers. We can do different things like that. So it's critical that you know what you're going to share. And I'm going to point out a couple of things you can do. I also put down there lead magnets. So I'll show you some examples of that in just a moment. And then, of course, you do want to know your budget. Now, if you're going to use social media and you're going to not do the ad part of it, it could be free. It just means you've got to take time. But then you may want to run ads. You may want to still do postcards. You may want to do other things. You've got to know your budget. Because, again, if I heard some of you say you are new agents, these are just the basic things to getting started, to finding sellers, and not wasting a lot of time and money, okay? So I put up here, know, like, trust. Again, we're still talking about prospecting. One of the best ways to generate new business as a listing agent, even if you're new, is to share testimonies. So I put here, reflect on your sales testimonies. You know, I have this quote. It says, people will do business and refer business to people they know, like, and trust. Testimonies have become our easiest way online for people to get to know, like, and trust us. So if you're not getting testimonies after each closing, whether it's been with buyers or sellers, get them. Because this helps people to know you, like you, and trust you so you can promote your business and generate more prospects. I'm going to keep going. Again, for the sake of time, I can talk about all this stuff all day, but I won't. I want to just kind of give you some tidbits. Now, again, still with prospecting, here are 5 of the typical categories. Number 1, we have traditional media. So, for example, maybe you have a billboard or you have radio and TV ads. That's fine. Number 2, you could be all about farming neighborhoods to get listings. So you send out mailers to people. That's fine as well. The third one is networking. Maybe you like to go to community events and hobnob and find out who needs to sell their home. That's great as well. These are all viable categories. Number 4, and this should really be everyone's favorite, your SOI, your sphere of influence, or past clients. Because I know, again, some of you said you're buyer's agents, you've been buyer's agents, but that great thing for you is you've already got a network of people that will likely need to sell their home, especially if they have any of the life events we talked about, from having more children to divorces to being empty nesters. So that's a great opportunity if you've been in the business for any length of time to start there as well. The 5th one, as we just talked about, is social media. So let me just show you a couple of examples of how you can use social media to connect with people, which will help you prospect. So this is a great example. And Monica, can you guys still see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's showing the sold sign with Instagram. Because I flipped screens, I didn't want to lose you guys.
It sure is.
Okay, awesome. So notice here, you know, after, like I've already said, you really want to always get a testimonial from a client. But notice what this agent did. This is Sarah. This is one of my, she's such a sweetheart. And what she did, she didn't focus on the fact of her, but she actually talked about this dog. And she talked about, you know, this dog just got a new house. He wasn't as happy about it as I expected, but I guess you can't win them all. She was just trying to be funny. This was a great way to connect with people. And the interesting thing about this was a non-annoying way to promote herself, because a lot of us, we like social media, but we don't want to annoy people. We don't want to get on here and make people feel like they need to block us. So I wanted to show this because this is a great way to show that you're a listing agent, show that you know what you're doing without it coming across very annoying and salesy. You can just talk about people's stories and lives. But again, as I was saying, social media is another way to generate leads. We don't have time to delve into each one of these categories. That wasn't the purpose. I wanted to mention these because I want you to think about which of these 5, what do you do the best? What have you done the best in? Even if it was connecting with buyers, because I want to tell you that if you can find your strength in generating leads, this will go a long way in helping you generate more listings. So think about, out of these 5 areas, what have you done the best in? And based on that, think about how can you do more of it. Because a lot of times, like I said, with the spaghetti method, we're all over the place. We're trying to do all 5 of these. But most of us are not good at all 5 of these. Most of us are good at 1 or 2, maybe 3. So identify again, which ones are you the best at? So now you can focus on really generating leads and prospects for selling. Okay. So with that being said, let me give you 4 of my favorite tech tools to help you generate leads based on those 5 categories. So if you are techie and you feel like, okay, I'd love to know a way to do some of this faster. 1, I have Smart Zip. I don't know if some of you guys are familiar with that, but it is a very good tool to help you identify sellers in your area who are likely to move. It's almost like reverse prospecting. Number 2, I have Cold Realty Resource. That's another opportunity for those of you that like cold calling. This is a great way to get a database of people that might need to sell and also really get out there and do some cold calling. And of course, I couldn't forget about Espresso Agent. I really think this is such a fantastic way for you to connect with people that are expired, that are withdrawn listings, as well as other types of listings. So Espresso Agent, as you already know, and hopefully you're already using it to help you prospect and generate leads. And number 4, some of you, again, that do like social media, you may have heard of Home Value Leads. That is an option for Facebook. So now if you want to generate sellers from Facebook, but you don't have time to manage your own profile yourself, this may be a good option for you, as well as many companies are, I know KW has some new tools coming out that will help you do this as well. So there are tech tools. I don't want you to feel like in the 5 things that I just listed that you've got to spend 20 of your 24 hours each day working on these things. Use some of these resources to help you. Also, I have down here agent retirees. Now that's not a tech option, but I always like to mention that because there's so many people that are retiring right now, and they have a book of business that you could likely buy from them, or they're willing to give you, and then you pay them a referral fee on the back end. So this could be another way. If you're struggling trying to just generate listings, this is another great way to jumpstart your leads. Okay. So with that being said, I talked about earlier, we have to know how and identify who and what type of lead they are. These are just 4 categories that I call them. You'll hear different names for them, but the first and foremost one is hotties. These are people that need to sell their home in 3 months or less. Hotties, you need to stay in touch with every day until they tell you otherwise. The reason why is because their situation is urgent. So these might be people that are relocating or part of the military or so forth. They've got a pressing need and you've got to stay in touch with them. You might hear other people call them hot leads or A1 leads, whatever. You can call it whatever you want, but I just say hotties because I think it's funny and easy to remember. The second group, they are thinkers. Now, these people are looking to probably move from 4 to 9 months. These are your people that maybe are move-up buyers because their mom is now moving in with them, or they're having more children, or they have people moving out. They know they want to move within probably this year, but they just don't have a firm date. Thinkers, I want you to stay in touch with them every week. This is going to help you follow up and convert your leads. The third group are our favorite ones, and unfortunately, we spend too much time with this group. These are our looky-loos. These are the people that don't know when they're going to move, but it probably won't be within 12 months. It's probably going to be longer. Looky-loos, we shouldn't forget about them. Some people write this group off, but in reality, we need to stay in touch with them. But I'm going to say, if you stay in touch with them at least once a month, you've done a great job. Now, when I say stay in touch, when I say follow up, let me clarify. That means you could message them on Facebook or Instagram or any social media site. You could call them, you could visit them, you could send them an email. So there is no limit to how you want to contact them. The key is that you do. Now, this fourth group is so vital, and many of us forget about our fans. Now, these may be people who don't need to buy a house in our area. Maybe they live in another state, or maybe they've owned their house for 40 years and they don't plan on moving because it might be your grandmother or someone, a teacher that you knew. The bottom line is these people will refer you and they will sing your praises every chance they get. So we need to stay in touch with our fans as well. And I want you to stay in touch with your fans at least every quarter, so every 3 months, but more ideally once a month if possible. This is critical because if we don't identify people and stay in touch appropriately, we will see again and again that they post, oh, I just sold my home with such and so, and it wasn't you. And I don't want that. So follow up and qualifying our leads is critical. Now, there are various CRMs that can help you do that, including Espresso agents. So use these resources to help you get going. We've talked about the pre-approach and what that means. I'm going to briefly just go through some of these things. First and foremost, you've got to know the history of the house, and you've got to be able to tell people, here I have SWOT. If you don't know what that stands for, SWOT stands for, in business, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. So every time you get ready for a listing appointment, you have to know about this home. What are the strengths? Meaning maybe they just finished the basement or added a room or, replaced the roof. Great. Maybe some of the weaknesses are they are next to a dumpster or, it could be anything that's a weakness. You've got to identify those things. What are the opportunities in the community? Perhaps they live near a thriving school district. What are some of the threats? Some of the threats might be, and they are actually, that interest rates are on the rise. You've got to identify all these things so that when you meet with your sellers, you can wow them and you can have an intelligent conversation about what's going on. A lot of times we go straight into pricing without giving them, this is like the behind the music, where they really understand if you are pricing them lower, they understand their weaknesses, they understand the threats. But then if you want them to price higher, you can speak more to their strengths and opportunities. The other thing with your pre-approach is understanding any circumstances that may exist or extenuating circumstances. For example, perhaps they have a divorce that's going on, and perhaps, there is also a bankruptcy, or maybe they have a mechanics lien, or there could be anything going on. But you want to try to do as much research, and you can do a lot of those type of things as far as seeing if there's liens, tax liens. You can do that research before ever talking with them. You want to do as much as possible before you connect with them. The next thing that you want to have on your radar is to start to identify what their needs versus desires are. And how can you do that? And this is all part of the pre-approach. A lot of this can come through connecting with people on social media. It's not that we become stalkers. I know some people talk about us being stalkers. We're not stalkers. We are, we're like Nancy Drew, or can't think of any current super sleuths, but we're super sleuth. We are basically just investigators. So we need to do as much investigation before we connect with them as possible. We talked about earlier objections. So we need to identify what are some likely objections. And I know you might think, well, I don't know for this person what they are, but if you Google it, you can find out what are like the top 10 common objections for almost every seller. We'll talk about a few of those, but I really want you to do some legwork on that if you haven't ever done it before. It really should be a part of your presentation because, again, this is going to help the seller trust you. They're going to see that this person really has done their homework. The last thing you should identify before the approach is who are the decision makers. Again, we can find a lot of this out before we even talk with them by checking the tax records. Who is actually listed on the deed? And maybe whoever has contacted you is not on the deed. Maybe it's a spouse, maybe it's a parent, maybe it's a child. Whatever it may be, you know you need to have the decision makers present when you do your presentation. That's going to be key. So that's the pre-approach. And I know our time is speeding to the end. And I told you, I could talk about this all day, but I won't. I want to get through a couple of objections. Here are 3 key objections that you should already have answers for, okay? Number 1, we all know this is critical, and that is our fee. A lot of people will fight us tooth and nail on our fee. How do you overcome this objection? The first thing that you have to do, I put here, quantify. I always like to ask agents, if you've never done this before, list out everything you do. You should. You should know what you do, and you should be able to show every listing seller what you do. So list out what you do from day 1 to day 0. Everything. After you list it out, put some hours to it. How much time does this take you? For example, you know that you have to take photos. You have to post it in the MLS. You might even do Facebook ads for it. You know, you might have an open house for it. There's so many little pieces that takes your time. Quantify it. Because here's the thing. People don't want to always show or recognize our value because they don't understand what we do. They think we literally just put a sign in the lawn and that's it. Now, some agents do, but I know nobody on this call does. I know you're doing more. So let's tell people. If we don't tell them, we can't expect them to know. We can't assume. Because here's the thing, even if this isn't their first home that they're selling, we don't know what relationship they had with the prior agent if it wasn't you. You can't assume. And then things have changed. Our workload has increased while also decreasing. It's decreasing somewhat because of social media and because of automation. So now we've got .loop and different things to help us, but we've got more things to do. So let's quantify it. That's going to be a big thing in order for you to show your value. The second thing is the actual listing price. Like I mentioned earlier in the intro, when we were looking at the scenarios, it will be so critical if you do not write things down. We have to write everything down. And if we think more about having a win-win, then there's a stipulation almost for every win-win possible, right? Like I said, even with the one where it was just an $8,000 difference. Instead of walking away from it and being so firm, so relentless, there could have easily been a stipulation that said, hey, if the home doesn't get any activity in 7 days, then all parties agree to reduce. Now you have a win-win and you get the listing. I also put pre-listing. There's a lot of things that we can do, like I mentioned also in the intro scenario. They could have done, one of the scenarios could have just done a pre-listing appraisal. That would have also helped them identify, is the $8,000 something to fight for? It likely wasn't because that's such a small amount. So let's start thinking win-win, writing more stipulations to help us get to the results we want. Lastly, it's you. I know some of you already mentioned that you do have confidence issues with you in this business. And if you're new to the sales side of this, always leverage your firm. And if you're on a team, your team leader, leverage who you work with. Because every time you go on a listing appointment, if you're new, you can say, we have closed all of these homes as a team. This is what our team has done, or this is what our firm has done. You don't have to highlight just you. You can actually focus on the strength that your company or your team brings. You should. So if you're not doing those 3 things, I want to encourage you to, because these are definitely the top 3 objections. I encourage you to Google more objections. Be prepared. Answer these, because if you can answer them, then you can get through the storm a lot quicker. And I do have a picture. That's me. That was me on our rowing team. And I told you I was comparing this to rowing. So we actually were in, it seemed like a monsoon or some type of hurricane had just happened. It was crazy. And we were actually out on the water, But like I mentioned to you earlier, we had to be prepared for storms. So we actually did a lot of simulations, a lot of things to prepare us. And as a result, they were able to post this picture of us where it looks like, okay, we weren't taken out of our comfort zone. It looks like we were, but we were prepared for it. And that was the thing. We were still able to win that particular race, even though it was the worst storm ever, because we were prepared. So for those of you, especially that are new, I want to encourage you again, Google what are seller objections and prepare your answers. Make it a part of your presentation before you even walk in the place.
Hey,
okay.
Lee, can I ask a question from the last screen? Can you expand upon, you said how we're free. Can you expand upon that thought a little bit?
Say one more time.
How we are free, I think, in the commission discussion.
Oh, about the fee?
Yeah.
Okay. Yes. So again, with that, well, let me actually go to the next slide because that might help as well. Perfect. So with the fee, here I have, in addition to listing out everything you do, because again, I think that's important. If they don't know what we do, they won't value it, right? So list out everything you do from start to finish. But here's the next thing. A lot of times we don't let our numbers speak for ourselves. So this should also be one of your ways to conquer the objections that sellers have. Now, for those of you that are new to listings, don't feel like this has to stand from your numbers alone. Again, go to your firm, go to your team, but look at these three areas. So first, speed. And these are the three areas that sellers care about. Sellers care about how fast can you sell my home? How many people will it reach? And how much money am I going to make from it? Period. If you can talk to those 3 points, you will win them over. So speed. You can show from your company what your average days on the market are. And if you feel that this is better than the market, the area's average number, show it. This is something to highlight because that means your firm or your team or you yourself, if you've been doing this long enough, you excel in selling faster than the market. Sellers want to know that. This conveys your value. Speed. Reach. So I mentioned, a lot of people now are using Facebook ads or even online ads in general. That is such a great way for you to be able to quantify for people. Hey, we posted, our last listing reached 1,000 people and it sold in 30 days. Those are numbers, and your numbers will help you win every listing appointment that you go on. The final thing, the profit side of this, is to focus on sales price versus your list price ratio. So if you do have people who are overbidding on some of your listings or some of the listings of your office or team, that actually is great because that shows sellers that you can maximize their profit. And that's, again, these are 3 ways to show people your value, what you're bringing to the table that they themselves can't do, because obviously for sell by owners think they can do this easily, but you do this every day. And then the next agent may not be able to do this as well either because they're probably not showing these numbers. So now you have a leg up and you're going to have a memorable presentation in front of people. So I know, Monica, we are probably at the very end of our time. I do want to show one thing about the presentation. Well,
feel free.
Okay.
1 minute.
Okay.
Sure. So
with this approach and everything, I'm going to skip ahead out of the approach, but hopefully you can see this here. In general, obviously, when you're approaching someone, which means this might be a call or maybe one of the leads that you got sent you an email. Obviously, you want to introduce yourself with some type of greeting. But I want to say that one of the key things that we don't do, and this is why a lot of times people get leads and they don't convert, is this right here. We have to solve a problem. We have to solve a problem. Now, with a listing, the problem might be, again, time. It might be helping them understand the profit they're going to make. It might be helping them just understand the process, because perhaps, again, maybe they're a new seller. This is their first time selling their home. But we have to focus on solving a problem in our approach. And oftentimes we can do that with a great lead magnet. Now, what is a lead magnet? I'm sure you're wondering. Let me show you an example. I think that's the best thing. So hopefully you all can still see my screen. I'm headed over to issue. And I just want to show you an example of a lead magnet. You don't have to do this, but this is an example. And a lead magnet, it's kind of in its name, but basically you are trying to create something that will attract leads, that will have them say, hey, I'm interested in what you're doing. Tell me more. Come to my home. Yes, I want an appointment with you. A lot of times we don't offer them something that's attractive. We just say, I'm an agent, which a lot of people can say. I'm an agent, so I should just have a right to do a listing appointment with you. And that's not true. So here's a good example of some lead magnets. So I'm here in issue, and all I typed in was home seller guide. So you can do this after this call as well. But I'm going to go to Lee Brown, and that's one of my friends over in Charlotte. She has a great team. Now, I don't want you to look at this and be overwhelmed and feel like you've got to create something this involved. But this is a great example of a lead magnet. So for example, if you did have someone that was a lead from social media, or they saw your postcard and perhaps wanted more information, you can say, hey, I'd love to send you my guide to selling a home in this area. And here is the guide that she uses. So it just has an introduction. It goes through the process. It talks about her team. So the point of this is something branded to you and your business that also shows that you're an expert. And they want it. This can be an opportunity to get into someone's home. Like, hey, I'd love to bring by this guide and also take a look at your home and see how we can get you the most profit. So there's a lot of opportunities for this lead magnet. Or even on social media, for example, you can offer something like this in order to attract seller leads. The point is, we have to get out of that 1999 mindset of I'm just going to post it and they will come. We have to give people something of value. And by giving something like this, you can easily now connect with more people. So again, this is just on issue. There's a lot of examples of these, and you can create something like this in Canva. That's a quick and easy place to create something like that, okay? So that's the approach. And here are, again, some of the tools that I just mentioned. So issue in Canva. And here's an example of one of my agents. She's out in Dallas. This is what she created as a lead magnet, and it's her guide to selling your Dallas home. She created this in probably, less than an hour on Canva. So it's really easy. It's very well branded. It looks great. And this is a reason for sellers to say, yes, you can come into my home. This is part of your approach. So with that, I've mentioned some other tools here that can help you, such as Prezi, Slide Dog, Spatial, Matterport. I'm sure some of you guys use that, as well as Uber Conference. These are all tools that can help you in your approach. I will quickly jump over to some of the things that you should bring to your presentation. And I know we are, Monica, are we at time actually? Because I can stop if need be.
Yes, we're at time, but if you have another 5 minutes and you guys want to hang on and watch this, great. If not, thank you for joining us, and we'll catch you next time. But if you can show us what we should bring to a listing appointment, I think that would be really valuable.
Awesome. So 2 things, and even just showing you what my client in Dallas had with her seller's guide. So it can look that pretty. It doesn't have to, though. I don't want to scare you guys and make you feel like you've got to have all of this really high-tech things, because it can really just be something simple that you create in Word. That's fine. But here are 2 critical documents that you should have every time you meet with a prospective seller. First and foremost, your seller's guide. You have to, like I said earlier, not assume that people know this process, they know your value, or they know what you bring to the table. You cannot assume that. So in our seller's guide, you want to walk them through preparation, showings, offers, appraisals, inspections, the financing process, like we talked about earlier. There could be a low appraisal. So let's prepare people for it. And any other issues that you come across, I'm going to tell you, your seller's guide should be an ongoing, growing document. So every time things come up and you learn new things, add it to your seller's guides. So now you can help people from day one understand this process and minimize surprises. The second thing that I always love for everybody to have is an expectations contract. This is critical because you don't want a seller to think that you are going to contact them every day and give them an update, and you don't, because now they're probably not going to refer you. They're probably may even post a negative review about you online, and it was all because you both had different expectations. So with the expectations contract, identify how you work. This is your opportunity to tell sellers, hey, you can expect to hear from me once a week, every other week, twice a month, whatever your schedule is. You can expect to hear from me by email, by phone, I'll come by, whatever it is. We have to identify that. Also, you want to walk them through who are the players in this, who you are, what your business is. And then I want you to also look at what you do. We talked about that earlier, but we've got to identify exactly what we bring to the table and what we do. We cannot assume that they know, because again, that's where people feel like, oh, well, your commission should be less. After you go through everything you do and you identify hours, they get it. And they get that they can't do it as easily. Find out from the seller what their time frame is. We talked about that earlier, but again, this is a document that allows you to identify their time frame, where obviously you know the location, but you may need to know where they're going to be, where if they're already in transit, maybe they are already relocating to another area, and how. That includes perhaps, again, maybe they do have some issues that will mar the sale, such as a divorce or something else. So you need to understand that. And of course, you have to know why. Why is a big deal, because this is going to determine how smoothly the process goes. So if you understand all of these things from day one, you will ensure that these people not only are happy with you, but then they refer you and they come back to you, because too often people do not return to us. So Monica, with that, we're at the sign it point. That part is a lot easier. We've already talked about follow-up some, but I can stop here. As I said, this is a much longer class, but I wanted to just share some of this as much as I could today on this webinar. But I also want to respect everybody's time. I know you guys have somewhere else to go, so I'll stop there. But Monica, if there's questions, I'm happy to sit on longer.
That was great. Thank you, Lee. Lots of good. I can see how that could be a 7-hour class. I mean, there's some seriously good points in there. It was great. There were a couple questions that I was able to just handle with a response. Several people wanted to know about the applications that you were recommending, so I went ahead and listed those, because I took a picture of the screen actually, because I thought
awesome, and I'll go back to it just to see.
Right. Cool. Good deal. The one I had one comment, not really a question, but it crossed my mind because it came up in somebody I was talking to the other day. When we talk about putting our days on market and showing that we can sell faster, I guess just be careful that that's the client's ultimate goal, because right now, a lot of people, when they don't have a place to go, they're petrified to sell their house in 3 days. So I think there is just a little caveat to that. Make sure that's what your client wants, is something fast.
Agreed, Monica. I think, and that's the part where with the expectations contract, knowing the why. If we understand the why, then we can tailor everything for them a lot better. But I agree with you, 200%.
Yeah, no, but it's great. I love the way you displayed that in that graph, and that's something I'm going to take with me, because it shows it benchmarked against something. Because we could say, hey, my average days on market is, 30 right now. Well, the average client's not going to necessarily know if that's great or bad or average or what, but I love the way you did it with these 3 things, and I'm going to take that and run with that. That was good.
Yay!
Yeah,
and this really is, I'm not making this stuff up. Like, the clients I work with, they will tell you these things when they started implementing, like this one. This is one of probably the biggest ones that has made a difference in their conversion, in actually walking away with listings.
Yes, I thought that was great. Somebody said the graphics during the entire presentation were top notch, very valuable. Yeah, I agree. You always have great graphics.
Thank you. And that's Powtoons. That's through Powtoons, guys. I encourage people, when you are doing listing presentations, Powtoons is another great resource if you want something to just perk up your graphics.
So you can just do slides through Powtoons, or I guess I always thought of it as video stories. Yeah.
Right. Yes, you can do slides as well. So that's what this was made through.
It's great. Love it. Well, as always, thank you very, very much. How do you spell? If you look in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen, that's Powtoon. Somebody was asking how you spell it. Powtoon. I think it's kind of PowerPoint/cartoon is probably what that is, right?
Exactly. That's kind of probably what they were thinking in that name.
Yeah. Yep. Well, thank you, Lee. Thank you, everybody on the call, the participants, our Espresso Agent Nation. Thanks for joining us, and I hope you guys have an incredible week. And Lee, I hope to talk to you soon.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. And if you guys have questions, Monica, feel free. If they do have questions, people can reach out to me, because I know, again, I'm trying to give you guys like a fire hose presentation of something that really I delve into a lot longer. So
absolutely, reach out to Lee, and if you'd like to talk to her about coaching or some of her classes, reach out to Lee there as well. All right, guys, thank you.
Bye, everybody.
See ya.